Zoning Board of Appeals, this meeting will be called to order. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I forgot in there.
We can add in, call the roll.
Yep, call the roll. Apologies. The Mute?
Here.
St. John?
Here.
Patterson?
Here.
Belkey? Here. And De Palma is not here.
So we're considering approving the agenda. Approving the minutes from the ZBA appeal meeting of the 28th December 22. We have any discussion or comments?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for the January 26th ZBA board meeting as presented.
It's been moved. We have a second.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. So approval of the minutes for the ZBA appeal meeting, 28 December 22.
Just a note for everybody, on the front page, under roll call, I have I'm going to call it a typo. It says no alternative members have been appointed. There's no alternate members, and so I've made a change on the official record that I'll submit. And then on page 2, it says it's discussing the decision on the Herman appeal, and I say, see attached note to Planning Commission. I don't have it attached. I will attach it before I submit it, and that is it's a letter from the chair to the Planning Commission stating what the variance approvals were, and asking a question about potentially reclassifying the business component at that address, if they do get a split, reclassifying it as a commercial establishment, say such as a C2,
There it is.
something like that. Right now it's set up as residential. So I will connect that to this before I submit it. And I'm going to change this to reflect that Don is here.
703. Any more discussion on the approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of the Wednesday, December 28th zoning board of appeals
We have a
with
motion to
the
approve
corrections.
Thank you.
with the corrections. We have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. I have no comments. Ready for the general meeting, proposed changes to Article 24 of the Village Zoning Ordinance. Mr. Belkey.
Okay. You've got 4 pieces of paper in front of you. If you recall from the December meeting, I'm sorry, the October meeting, we were starting to look at Article 24, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals component of our zoning ordinance. We're looking at it for potential changes, and there's a couple things that have come out that would change the article. One of those is items out of the Zoning Enabling Act of 2006. There was a small number of components that I think should be changed, and then 6 months ago or so, Christy, you probably could help me date this, maybe it was more than that, the Village Council passed a transitional overlay district for the village and there was a number of changes that needed to be made to the zoning ordinance as a result of that, and one of them is in the Zoning Board of Appeals. It limits the ZBA's authority to do certain things with respect to use variances. And so we kind of walked through some of the potential changes at that meeting, and then we said that I would come back and I would recommend where things potentially would fit in. I don't want to say that I've caught everything. I think I've caught most stuff. So once we're done tonight and you kind of see where the changes are, Mr. Chair, you may want to say everybody go back out, take one more look, because we do have another meeting that we could come back with for a final review, or you could decide that we've done enough picking away at this thing and submit it to the Planning Commission for their consideration. We could go a couple ways. Okay, so the first piece of paper you've got is a single piece of paper, and it says up at the top, and it's really a change page. It says the intent of this is to update the section, and it's really the sections in Article 24, the sections with changes found in the Zoning Enabling Act of 2006, and clarify current section. That should be article. You got articles and sections. So Article 24 ambiguities. Then you've got Article 24 in front of you, and there's some pencil markups on it, kind of showing where things go. Christy, I was asking Becky and Sam kind of how you guys were doing it, and you were recommending, and then Becky was taking the notes on it, I guess, where to insert it and so on.
Yes.
So this was my attempt to kind of do that. We'll see how well it works. You've got a copy of the couple of the key pages out of the Zoning Enabling Act, the ones that you've got the cover page, and then you've got the pages that specifically deal with Zoning Board of Appeals, and then you've got the McKenna, who's our McKenna document on transitional overlay. So that's the four things you've got in front of you. So I'm going to try to walk through this and not get complicated as we do it. So with the Article 24 ZBA paperwork in front of you, the first recommended change is at the very top. It says section 24.01 authority. I would recommend we change that to authority and powers, simply because there's not a lot of detail in Article 24 about what specifically the Zoning Board of Appeals is able to do. Right? So I would change authority to authority and powers. And then if you look, the next change would be where you see the pencil mark number 1. And so, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read what I want to recommend that we put in. So it's talking about exercise, it's the zoning board exercising its power as provided for in the ordinance, which is the zoning ordinance, and the City and Village Zoning Act, Public Act 207 of 1921 as amended, and then the Zoning Enabling Act is the big amendment that has occurred since then. And so right after it says as amended, I would say by the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, Act 110 of 2006. And then it goes on in such a way that the objectives of this ordinance. So we're just putting these two principal documents that tell us what our authorities are and processes are. I'm just instead of saying as amended, I'm sticking that in there as amended by this Zoning Enabling Act. Okay. Everybody kind of see what I'm doing?
So you
Okay.
can trace back and understand why and
It-
where.
I'm sorry?
So if somebody wanted to go back and figure out
Well,
how you got where you got.
yeah, the current zoning ordinance says, you know, and a lot of these documents will say as amended because they get amended over time. And so the principal authority to do planning and zoning activities came out of this 1921 Act, and the Zoning Enabling Act, though, has changed some components of that. The only place in the current zoning ordinance, and I know the Planning Commission is working to amend it, but the only place that acknowledges the Zoning Enabling Act is way in the back at the very end of the document. There's one sentence that says, oh yeah, you know, the Zoning Enabling Act of 2006. And if you don't know that, and I would have never have thought to look back there to see if there was something that amended what was in the zoning ordinance, you wouldn't catch changes. And a significant change that we got balled up with in Village Council was, do we have enough members on the ZBA? The zoning ordinance for the village says you got to have 5. The Enabling Act amended it to say you only needed 3, as an example. And I wasn't that familiar with the Zoning Enabling Act at the time, and so I argued back and forth with council that it had to be 5. And I think it was Jeff Pohorsky, the lawyer, said, no, it's really only 3. So this just puts it right up front, because none of us will be here forever doing this job. It'll move on to somebody else. If they see that, then they can go reference the Zoning Act of 1921, and they can reference the Enabling Act of 2006 if they have any real questions about what their authorities, powers, processes, procedures are. So I'm just sticking it in there so that it's clearly understood that those are the 2 principal guiding documents in the case of the Zoning Board of Appeals that tells us how to operate. Number 2 adds a new paragraph under the authority paragraph, and it's coming out of the Zoning Enabling Act. It's about 5 or 6 lines, so I wasn't going to try to write it all in there. So that's the one. If you pull up page 21 of the Zoning Enabling Act, you're going to see a rectangle around some language, and this is the language that really indicates what the Zoning Board of Appeals powers are. And I'm going to kind of run through it very quickly. Zoning Board of Appeals shall hear and decide questions that arise in the administration of the zoning ordinance, including the interpretation of the zoning maps, and may adopt rules to governance procedures, sitting as a Zoning Board of Appeals. And it goes on and on about the different types of things that that we're able to do and who we can hear from if they have an appeal and so on. So I think it gets referenced in a couple places within Article 24, but not as succinctly as it does here. So I would just put this whole paragraph in the box here. I would stick it underneath as a separate paragraph under Section 2401. So you would have that first paragraph, then you would have this second paragraph in its entirety. So it's the authority for who we are and what we do, and then the powers that we have.
So we can reference 125.3603.
I'm not going to reference it. What I would do is
Just add that.
I would just add this entire paragraph. And so Christie, obviously being part of being the planning chair, I would get with her and say, okay, how do you want me to do it? I can type it all in there. For ease tonight, I'm just saying this is what I would just take this lock, stock, and barrel and stick it underneath the first paragraph of 2401. Okay. Number 3 was an item I was also going to stick in there, but I did catch it in Article 24. It was an issue about decisions are final, subject to somebody wanting to take this then to court, right? I mean, our decisions in the Zoning Board of Appeals are really the end of things in the village. Somebody does have the right to take it, though, into legal channels if they so desire. But it's kind of referenced elsewhere, so I don't want to put a bunch of redundant stuff in here if I don't have to. So that's why you see number 3 is omitted. This out of the way. Okay, the next one is item number 4. This is under section 2402. You see number 4 there, and that's the infamous statement that says the Zoning Board of Appeals shall consist of not less than 5 members, and the Zoning Enabling Act says for municipalities under 5,000 you only need 3. So so I would recommend that we change that, and you see item number 4 on the change sheet. It says consist of not less than 3 members. Right, that would have saved me about 3 council meetings where we're going back and forth with other members of council as to whether we had sufficient people to have a quorum or not, and so on. And so that's a simple change there, and gets us in sync with the Enabling Act. Then number 5, this is just a little, and I'll say number 5 and number 6 are just clarification items. They talk about, the first sentence talks about alternates, and so I say for item number A, it says 1 member may be a member of the planning commission, and so on, and saying it's indicating that you could have a member from planning and a member from the village council, and so on and so on. Conceivably, they could be alternates. You could have a member from planning that is an alternate. You could have a member from planning that's out of the village council. So I'm just suggesting there that it says 1 member or alternate may be a member of the planning commission. And then number 6 is, or item B or number 6 is essentially the same. Members and alternates shall be selected from the electors of the village. Just a clarification.
So just curious, member or alternates, does that mean that if your alternate is a member, then the others can't be?
You clarify that. I'm not sure
I don't believe you can have 2 planning commission members here. If your
Oh, no.
alternate
Yeah.
were a planning commission member,
Yeah.
and you already have a planning commission member,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
both cannot be here.
Yeah, you would, I think I got it. So, yeah, you really can't have a primary village council member and an alternate village council member. You get 1, but they could be one or the other. Ideally, I would think most municipalities, if they had a lot of people signing up to be on Zoning Board of Appeals, they may want somebody from council or somebody from planning to be there to monitor what's going on.
Yeah.
But they might say, hey, let the citizens, if you got enough citizens that want to run the show, then just be alternates, right? But yeah, Christy's right. You wouldn't have 2 members from council or 2 members from planning. You just get 1 in a role of as either a member or as an alternate. Now the interesting thing is you can have, this is a bit of a digression, but you can have more than 3 members, as we do here. It's just that sometimes pickings are slim, You don't get a lot of people that necessarily want to step up and do this kind of stuff. And so you have to have a minimum of 3 to be able to do the job. So you may find having 50 people on the zoning board of appeals is a little unwieldy, so you may cut it off at a certain number and say, no, we're going to just cut it at 7 members, and 2 of you guys can be alternates just in case. I mean, I don't think there's a maximum number, but you don't want it to become too unwieldy. Okay. Then if you go to section 2404, organization, the Zoning Enabling Act just makes a point of indicating that if you don't have a chairperson, then you will have an acting chairperson. Now we've got a deputy chair, so Mike in this case, if Dennis was unavailable, he would be the acting chairperson. We've had a case where I think, I'm trying to remember when this was now, we didn't have a chair. I'm trying to get this right. We didn't have a chair, we had a vice chair, or maybe it was the other way around. We had a chair but not a vice chair, and the chair wasn't available, and somebody else stepped up to run the meeting. So when they do that, they have to have the authority to act as a chair. So that's a lot of talking just to indicate that item B there at number 7. I would recommend we say all meetings of the board should be held at the call of the chair, or in their absence, the acting chairperson at such times the board may determine. And then item C, moving on to number 8. So this has been a bit of an issue here. This is where you get some ambiguity. It talks about make decisions on all matters within a reasonable time. And Joe, you always told me it really needed to be about 30 days.
Less than 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days. So what we've again, on the assumption that at some point none of us are going to be here, it'll be all new people, they probably need something that indicates that they can't go beyond a certain amount of time. And so this says, the board shall render decisions upon all matters within a reasonable time, and I've indicated that not to exceed, so it's a reasonable time not to exceed 30 days from the appeal being filed with the village office. So that indicates to the board there, and generally to the secretary, that there's some urgency to get the appeal paperwork, understand what it is, notify the members, get the notices out for public hearing, get the announcements in the newspaper and all that kind of stuff. You don't have a lot of time really to sit and dwell on it. You want to get the zoning board together and make a decision for the appellant. Questions on that? Okay, no questions. Please move to section 2406. Appeal of administrative decisions. And if you find item number 9, it's talking about somebody that goes before planning and they get a decision that they don't like. They have the ability to appeal, but what this is saying is they've only got 21 days to make that decision, put a packet together, come in and get it filed. It seemed to me, you guys tell me here, it seemed to me that is really not a bunch of time, right? It's not a lot. And so what I would recommend is just use the same 30-day, that they've got 30 days to, so essentially a month. They have an issue, they have some time to think about it, they can get their appeal paperwork in. Sometimes it's fairly complicated. I guess they can always ask for an extension, although I've never heard of anybody doing it, but it gives them essentially 7 more days. I think it's reasonable. I don't know why specifically there's a time limit of 21 days, although you don't want to give an open-ended amount of time to somebody to come back and appeal the decision, 3 years later. So that obviously that doesn't make a lot of sense, but 21 days seems to be awful short. So in the case of that, I would say I would just add where item 9 is not to exceed, instead of 21 days, not to exceed 30 days. And then it matches the amount of time we have then to take action. Section 24.9. So I think the non-conforming determinations. This is the infamous issue about the signage, about abandoned signs. And there's no argument that the ZBA has the ability to make that determination that a sign is abandoned or so on, but the issue is, do we really go out and look for them? We're really not an enforcement entity, right? That's a building inspector or a code enforcer. We can make a decision on it, whether or not it's abandoned. And you might recall some of the signs we had. We had a sign that had been, there was no sign copy in it. You had a couple fluorescent bulbs in it hanging off the side of the building, and it had literally been there for at least 20 years, because I kept thinking, why the heck is that thing still up there? Man, that looks terrible. And but we never got anything coming in that suggested that it should be taken down. We had another business that they had changed, and now there's just a sign frame. And this is our building over in the residential area when that changed hands, and just a metal pipe frame with a light there, a spotlight, and sticking out in the front yard. The third one was one downtown that had it's an odd-shaped sign. There was nothing in it. Had a couple fluorescent bulbs up at the top, just kind of sat there. And so I think we worked through that, but the issue was, it's really not ours to go out and do anything about unless somebody gets it to us. And so what I would recommend here is to say, and I'll truncate it, determine whether a sign is illegal or has been abandoned in accordance with section 13.10A, sign removal by village action. And then I'm just adding, upon notification and recommendation by the village building inspector or code enforcer. I just remember that took us, because we were meeting every 6 months, I think that took us 1.5 years to figure out. And then the last one is probably the easiest of all of this. If you look at section 24.14, how am I doing on battery, Joe?
Okay, no worries.
Okay. We're almost done, actually.
2-minute warning coming up.
Section 24.14, that talks about limitations of authority. If you look at the McKenna document and turn in there, you're going to find 2 pages that got big black lines on them. And what this is at the time was, this was proposed zoning ordinance text amendments for use variances. And essentially McKenna was recommending, and council did pass this, they were recommending that that entire section be changed. Some of it in the copy here is actually the same as what you see, but a substantial amount has changed. And just for talking about it, it was just easier to say, hey, let's take everything out of there and replace it with the new verbiage that's here. And that goes into some detail about some additional restrictions to the zoning board of appeals when they're looking at use variances. And really what this is referencing is the transitional overlay district. I don't even know that we can at this point say that we don't agree with it because council has accepted this. So, so I would make that entire change of 2414, pull that out, put the new section in, and that, in my mind, wraps up the changes. So, so maybe small in some cases, but still important because we have kind of jumped through some hoops on some of these things, the number of people, the signs, and so on. And so, again, the way I looked at this was to update it, make it sympathetic to the Zoning Enabling Act, the stuff that it's got in there, call out the specifics where it's important to what we do, change a couple of the ambiguities that are in there, and then, as I say, put in the big change from the discussion on transitional overlay. Thoughts, anybody?
Are your thoughts on to actually review the document, reprint it, and then bring it back?
Christy, you got any thoughts how you want me to give you this stuff if the group decides tonight that they're good with this? I mean, so really take a step back. I can try to go ahead and with a little bit more time cut and paste some of that in there so you can see how it actually reads. I don't have a version of this of the zoning ordinance on the computer. McKenna does, and so McKenna would have to make the changes, right? So that's what makes it a little bit difficult. Otherwise, I would have done it myself. But
I'm personally good with this.
I mean,
it's all just clarification.
It's clarification. That's really all we wanted to do. When we went into this, the big one, as I say, in my mind was the month and a half discussion over how many people you got to be, and then well, it says right there, and it says it shall be put into the zoning ordinance. Well, now it shall be put in there, so we don't have to guess in the future. And I don't think I missed anything. There is a lot in the Zoning Enabling Act that you could take and put in here, but it's unlikely the things that I'm thinking about we would wind up having to deal with. I didn't put anything in there about the court component. For example, if somebody disagrees with us, then they could take it to court. I didn't put anything in there because I think that it's kind of is highly unlikely. The only other thing I guess I would say is I've never found the zoning ordinance all that easy to read and negotiate. Stuff is sometimes not where you...
And you're bouncing back and forth.
You're bouncing back and forth.
A lot of that is what we're hopefully trying to make some corrections to. Our February 6th meeting, we are on 18, but I will get an email sent out in the morning to let them know, familiarize yourself with 24.
Yeah.
We'll go over it at the meeting. If you'd like to attend our meeting, it'd be great.
Sure.
I will go over our notes.
And when is that?
February 6th at 7 o'clock.
Next week.
Yes.
Okay.
I will go over your notes with everybody and.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll try to write this. I don't know if there's a better way to write it up or not.
I think with our notes, we'll be fine going like this, and we'll discuss it with Becky. We can probably get everything sent in all at one time with our stuff and your.
Okay, no, that'd be great. I did tell Becky today I would give her a copy of all this. I have a couple typos and stuff that I want to clean up before I give it to you guys, but, yeah.
You just know I'm taking these notes that I have right here.
Oh, okay.
so
No, that's great.
Whatever you want to change, that's for
great.
you.
Well, you see the 2414
Yeah.
instead of 2314,
Right.
and yeah, it's Article 24, not Section 24.
And that's what we're doing, is running through here, making scribbles and changes, and
Yeah.
you're fine.
You know, there could have been potentially a lot of other stuff I could have moved around to get, make it read a little bit better. But that's happy to glad, and I didn't want to go there unless you guys wanted me to. Okay. All right.
Any more comments on what Ross is talking about?
Okay, then I will, Mr. Chair, at your discretion, then I'll submit it to planning.
You want to take a voice vote on that? Or just a recommendation?
I think if you're good with it and confident that everybody here is happy with it, then I'll just do it.
Okay, sounds like everyone is on board. Yeah.
Okay, I'll send it to planning. Okay. And then I would just mention we had confirmed the next ZBA working session, so in theory then there is no need for a next ZBA working session on 23 February at this point. And so unless Dennis you want us to do something else.
If there's a reason for it, we will, but there's nothing standing out that we have to.
There'll be, then what will happen is the next meeting would be in the March timeframe. And that would be a regular semi-annual meeting, so there'd be a couple month break then.
That'd be before the end of the fiscal year, right?
It would be, it could be in April as well.
Because it starts April 1, right? Does it, the fiscal year start April 1?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll get with you and we can come up with a potential.
Yeah.
But March is roughly 6 months from October, which was the last semi-annual, and that's when we try to keep it. Okay?
So we have no citizen comments here. Any board comments?
Just I appreciate the work on making some amendments to the recommended amendments to the Article 24.
Thank you, Ross. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Adjourned at 7:40.
How we do, Joe?